G'day guys, and welcome back to the Boundary Riders Podcast. Today I think we're up to episode 25 now, I believe, and we're up to round 23. Obviously a big round 22 just happened. We saw Port Adelaide finally get back on the board with a big win. We saw a massive smashing in the derby. We saw Collingwood beat Geelong. Brisbane just scrape over the line against the Crows, and probably game of the round, Carlton versus Melbourne. Carlton just got over the line in controversial fashion with the score review, and today that's where we're going to start with the score review system. Now, I have been saying for many years that the score review system in the AFL is atrociously awful and underfunded and whatever you want to say. It's crap. They have not put any money into it or enough money into it to make a fair effort at it, in my opinion. I know it's probably terrible wording, but it's not good enough. We've seen in many other sports, the NFL, Premier League, obviously soccer, even the Women's World Cup going on at the moment. Just every other sport, even the NRL, if you want to go another Australian. We've seen that the review systems are pretty good. Now, I can't really talk too much about the NRL because I haven't actually watched a lot of it. But I know the Premier League is very good at it. The NFL is one of the best in the world at it. And it's a very hard sport, so I want to try and combine it a little bit more to the NFL because it's a little bit different to the Premier League. Obviously, soccer's a little bit different. Not that the NFL is anywhere near as similar as the AFL, but I think it can combine to a few things on the fact of crossing the line and stuff. The amount of cameras that are on the lines, and you can actually see those sort of things. And the amount of times we get blurry vision of touch balls in the AFL is just way too much, and it's not funded enough. And that was personified on the weekend with Melbourne versus Carlton. Now look, my opinion is that was a goal for Christian Petrarca, but I will say that I don't know if the evidence was exactly 100% definitive to say it was a goal. I'd say it's about 80 to 90, so my issue isn't on the fact of the umpiring making the decision. My issue is 100% on the technology and the AFL for not funding it enough. It's ridiculous that decision should not have been looked at and not have definitive evidence to show if that was a goal or not. That was on the goal line, that being touched, and we had a camera view that was atrocious. You could not see it. That was crap, and I think a couple of commentators have came out and said that could decide a final. I don't know why people have not been talking about this more for years now, that it is atrocious. It shouldn't have had to come to this point where a game has been decided on a score review like that, because that was shocking, and I think it cost Melbourne a game. It cost them 4 points for that. I mean, congratulations to Carlton. They were very good in that game as well, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But on the other hand, I think Melbourne have won that game, and they've just lost 3 points for that. But purely because the technology is not good enough in the AFL. So the AFL need to seriously look into funding it more, especially next season. But if a game is decided in finals this season because of underfunding of the technology, go to America, go to these different places around the world. I mean, if the Gold Coast Suns can send someone over to Italy to bring Damien Hardwick back, surely the new CEO, whoever the fuck is taking over Gillon McLaughlin's job, surely they could go over to the best places in the world where the technology is there and bring it to the AFL. Because, I mean, they microchip the fucking soccer balls now. They could surely do that with a footy, and they could fucking have many cameras on different plays of the game. Not one camera with blurred vision. For fuck's sake, we've got 8K on TVs now. Surely we've got the technology to have at least 4 cameras on a play. That is ridiculous, and it's embarrassing from the AFL from how that was handled altogether. No fault of the umpires here, and I am one, if you've ever listened to me, like last week we talked about how bad umpire dissent is and how fucked that is. And then they've just dropped it this weekend with the Braden Maynard stuff. But we may get into that a little bit later. But I've got a lot of stuff to cover today. So, yeah, basically fund the technology in this game because that was ridiculous that got away with it, and do some research because the AFL is lagging behind massively on the technology side of things. And in 2023, sport, I think that should be at the top of the technology, especially when the AFL are making so much money now. They're back, making a profit. They should be investing into some big technological movements in the next couple of years. And obviously Saturday night showed that they've got a long way to go. But one thing that came up today, I'm recording this on a Monday, it's coming out Tuesday morning, a sad news, Nick Naitanui and Paddy McCartan have retired, basically because of the injuries. It's sad because both of them have been really good. Obviously, Paddy McCartan I'm probably going to talk a little bit more about because I'm a Swan supporter. But I will talk about a little bit about Nick Naitanui. Obviously, was one of the best ruckmen of his time. He made All-Australian, I think it was in 2016. He missed out the grand final in 2018, I believe. It's really sad to see him go. He really just didn't get on the park in the past 3 or 4 years. I don't even remember him since 2020. Nick Naitanui hitting the field regularly. So it's really sad for West Coast. But in the end, I think it's a good decision for him to retire because I think West Coast now have to clear out anyway. We've obviously seen now that Tom Barras decided to stay at West Coast. So it looks like that West Coast... that's one senior player that's staying, and I think that's really good for the Eagles. I'm a little disappointed for Swans out there. I think it would have been a really good pickup, but I mean, I think that is one player that they'd be really happy to stay because he's not too old yet, Tom Barras, and I think they could definitely build around him. But Nick Naitanui, it's really tough that he had to go, but that he's had to retire due to injury. But yeah, it's really unfortunate for him, and hopefully, he can build into a better life. Because I mean, I know footy players, when it's the end of their career in the footy, they're only 30. They've still got so much of their life left. So it's really unfortunate that Nick Naitanui couldn't play through. But I think, I know this may sound a little bit cruel to Nick Naitanui, but I think Paddy McCartan's a lot worse because he's so young. Was a number 1 draft pick as well, way back. I think it was 2016 as well. He came and got drafted to St Kilda as a forward. All the hype around him, and the concussion has just taken him out of the game. It's really unfortunate that for so many years the concussion has not been, policed as well in the AFL. Obviously, we've seen a lot of players come out and going to sue the AFL as well for damages and stuff, and I think that is totally fair. I think the AFL have been atrocious, and Port Adelaide were atrocious a couple of weeks ago, bringing those players back on the field, and I think that they got just what they deserve. Probably should have got even more, but anyway, that's probably for another day. It's really sad for Paddy McCartan. He arguably got Sydney. Well, I don't think he got Sydney to the grand final last year, but he was a big player in that push towards the Swans grand final push last year. And then in what was it, round 3 against? It was against Port Adelaide. I just can't remember what round it was. I think it was round 3 or 4 when he went down to that head injury, and I think at that point, kind of everyone knew it was kind of over. I think it was a little bit crap how they publicised it so much about, is he going to retire? He should be forced to retire from the media, and then now they're all like, oh, it's so sad to see him retire. It's like, are you going to sit there and act like you're so sad? No, you're the one who fucking was sitting there 10, 20 weeks ago, sitting there saying, oh, he needs to retire. And it's like, oh, we're so sad that he's retiring. You don't give a fuck. So don't act like you care. Fuck off and move on, whatever. Media doesn't give a fuck. I feel really sorry, though, for the McCartan family as well for what they've had to go through over the past 6 or 7 years. I hope that Tom McCartan's okay as well. Obviously, he's not going to see this shit, but yeah, it's really sad for Paddy McCartan, and I just hope he continues the rest of his life. He can just do it the best he can. I think he's pretty well okay. I just think that they would have told him you can't do physical sport anymore, and hopefully he can inspire others to keep themselves checked if they're going to play sport, that they know all the risks and they know what they are worth. Also, what they are worth as a human. They're not just a robot that goes out in the football field every week, and they don't just force them out there because they're a moneymaker for a certain extent. Because I think that the sports, at the end of the day, the AFL, even the NRL, all those other sports, they're a business at the end of the day. They know that if their best players aren't out there, that they make less money. So I'm not saying that Paddy McCartan's a huge money grabber, no offense to him, but I'm saying that if they're going to force other players to get back on the field because they need to win a game or something, I just think that's not on, and the AFL really need to take a stand here. And I'm glad that Paddy McCartan has retired, even though I'm sad, obviously, because I thought he was a really good player. And it's really sad circumstances for him to go, but I think it was for the best, and I think the McCartan family would be also sad at the moment, but also kind of knowing that this is a good decision in the end. So That's probably where I'll all go with that. Hopefully in the next couple of days, everything's okay. And if I see Caroline Wilson come out and say, oh, he didn't front the media like they did with Buddy Franklin, haven't you fucking grab that stick out your ass, Cara, and fuck off. God, I was so pissed when she started acting like, oh, we were so sad that Buddy Franklin didn't come out and like give us a speech and, you know, didn't kick us a goal from 50 as a celebration of his career. I mean, who gives a fuck if... Oh, whatever. We're going to get into more of this crap. Don't worry about it. Whatever. But the last thing I wanted to talk about before we get into the round was, this was a little bit earlier in the week, but I wanted to talk about this for quite a while, is the fact that Tom Papley's new podcast called The Early Crow, I believe, has been getting a lot of scrutiny in the mainstream media, which is scary. That, you know, potentially in a couple of years, my channel could get more views than fucking Channel 9, so fuck off. I mean, that's not true, but whatever. I think it's funny that a lot of most YouTubers now get way more views than fucking mainstream media here in Australia. But anyway, Tom Papley's podcast got into a lot of scrutiny because the Australian Federal... Some article from some big wankers... the Financial Review made a article talking about... Tom Papley's new podcast, because it's all about... Well, it's not all about... I don't think it's all about... I haven't listened to it, I'm going to be honest. Yes. But it is about, like, horse racing and betting and that sort of stuff. And I don't know if a lot of people would know this, but Tom Papley is very much into that. I follow him on Instagram, and he does talk about that quite a lot. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you, like, if you should follow horse racing or if you should even, like, bet. I mean, I don't much. I do occasionally. My brother does it a little bit more. Obviously, he's not here today. You know, he's got a job, loser. But he does that a lot. And obviously, he has a page that I link every day, every podcast or whatever, talk about betting and stuff. And, you know, if you want to bet, that's totally fine. If you don't want to bet, that's totally fine. I don't think you should control what people do. And that's up to them. I think that banning betting, I mean, whatever, if you want to try and do that, you can, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think that, like, trying to ban certain vices is not the way to go. I think you need to find solutions to help with certain vices like gambling. Like, I know it's such a huge issue. Having a gambling problem, you know, can ruin lives. And so can things like smoking and things like drinking and things like that. But I don't think just banning them altogether is the way to go. I don't think that's the way to fix it at all. And to come out and make a fucking shit article, a clickbaity article to talk about how poor Tom Papley's podcast is or whatever, because he talks about betting, I think that's ridiculous. Now, I know the Sydney Swans chairman, I think it's Andrew Ireland, I think that's his name. Oh, are you serious? You make... Oh, my God. You make people pay for this fucking article, the Financial Review. You fucking clickbait your title, leave the first fucking paragraph, and then you make us pay $3 fucking for a subscription to watch your shit? Fuck you. That makes me even more angry. Whatever. They put in the headline, Sydney Swans no dickheads policy stretches thin. Hey, Mark Di Stefano, you're a fuckwit. Whatever. Don't fucking add, like, under former coach Paul Roos, the Swans adopted a no dickheads policy regarding recruitment. It was about bringing through players who weren't good at kicking goals, but also good... I don't get what the hell that means. Don't act like Tom Papley's such a dickhead because he fucking bets. I mean, your advertisements on your thing are all about, like, fucking cryptocurrency. Like, fuck off. You talk about cryptocurrency and this sort of shit, and fucking 9 times out of fucking 10 cryptos are fucking scams. So don't sit there and act all high and mighty talking about an AFL player who, let's face it, has to find something to do at the end of his career. He's only going to have a career till, you know, 32, 33, 34. Like, how many times do players get over 34 years of age and play AFL? Barely any. And Tom Papley's got to have something to do after that. He's not just, oh, sorry, I'm going to go work at fucking Coles because the Financial Review led by Stefano Fuckwit wrote an article about me. Oh, fuck off. Who cares? I hate this shit about fucking, but it has to be good role models as well. I understand that AFL players are, like, in the limelight, and obviously they have to keep a certain profile to, you know, be a role model to society in an extent. But also, they're young they're young men, and also for the AFLW and all those stuff, they're young athletes as well. As long as they're not doing anything illegal, which he's not doing anything illegal, who gives a fuck? And by the way, kids wouldn't be... I mean, if your kids are on Instagram and fucking looking at Tom Papley on fucking Instagram and they're betting on your fucking phone, you're a shit parent. It's got nothing to do with fucking Tom Papley's podcast. I'm so sick of this shit when they're acting like players have to be the most biggest role models and can't fucking have their own lives because they're fucking playing AFL football, which is their dream. Their dream wasn't to sit there and parent your fucking kid and fucking be the most best person in the fucking world and be like... I'm trying to think of one of those saint people. Meghan McCall or whatever the fuck. That was totally wrong. I was going to say Meghan Markle. That's not right. But there was some woman we learned about in school. I'm just rambling, but it just shit me so much reading this shit. Because one, they put this article in there. I just realised this. I thought they gave you the full article. They give you fucking a paragraph and they make you pay for it. That's a fucking scam. Fuck off. I'm not paying $3 to read one of your shit articles where you probably repeat yourself 20 times just to reach your word quota, you dork. Ugh. Anyway, I've been rambling for a good 15 minutes, but sorry guys. Yeah, basically, if you want to bet, go ahead. If you don't want to bet, that's fine. As long as you're not doing anything illegal, I don't give a fuck. He's an AFL player, yes, but how many other betting podcasts are there out there? Many. Huge amount. It's not that big a deal. I don't think it's that controversial that he made a podcast and he talked about betting, which is his passion. Like, that's like getting angry at me for doing something like this and then talking about betting. Like, just because he's in the football limelight, if you didn't follow his Instagram, you wouldn't know who the fuck... You wouldn't even know he was doing a podcast. So for you to write these stupid articles and then Fox Footy to put it up there and say, oh, they're all angry at him and, oh, the club are pretty angry at Tom Papley... They don't give a fuck, I bet you. I bet you they don't give a shit. I bet he walked into the club and one of them said, oh, I saw you posted you're doing a podcast. That's pretty cool. What's it about? Betting? I'm doing it about horse racing. Yeah, I thought it'd be pretty cool. Oh, okay. Pretty cool. Hey, nice kick goal on the weekend. Yeah, that's pretty good. I think you're single, McInerney. Do you like women too? Yeah, that's pretty awesome. That's how the conversation would have gone. You think one of the Swansea players there would have been like, oh, Tom, I don't think you should be doing betting because, do you know people can get addicted to that? Yeah, people can get addicted to playing fucking Fortnite, so fuck off. Anyway, let's move into the round so far, because that's my rant, and I'm going to just keep going for a long time after that. But nonetheless, sorry, guys. Anyway, sorry. Alright, so round 22 began with a massive game. Collingwood versus Geelong at the MCG. This was brought up to be a big match. I think people gave Geelong a real big chance in this one because of how Geelong came back in the last week or so, and Collingwood were pretty down on form and also had a few injuries coming into it. And they started this game off very well. They were about 6 goals to 3 at quarter time. There were 6 goals to 2 about a minute or so before quarter time too. So people thought this was going to be a really good chance for Geelong to maybe pull this one off. But it didn't really work out that way for Geelong, and now they're right back in the pack, losing by 8 points to Collingwood. It's going to be really tough for Geelong to get in from here. They have to win their last 2 games. Yes, they do have some winnable games, but they also need a couple of results to probably go their way as well, because if a couple of teams can edge away in the next couple of weeks, they could easily not make the 8, and at the moment, the Swans are in the 8, so for a club to say to have a lot of people would have thought that Sydney would have fallen off this year, and to an extent they have. I mean, they're not in the top 4, but Geelong have fallen right off, and they've got St Kilda next week, who looked okay against Richmond. If St Kilda can hold up in defence, they could potentially win this one, but we'll talk about that more when we get to the tips. We'll get to the votes, though. 3, 2, 1. The 3 votes went to Jeremy Cameron, 2 votes to Brody Myercheck, and the 1 vote to Josh Dacos. Jeremy Cameron kicked the 7 goals in the end. Was very good up forward. I don't think he deserved 2 of them. But anyway, that was fucking out of bounds. I don't care. That was fucking ridiculous. But he played pretty well. Jeremy Cameron, he got back into some form. And if he can hit form for Geelong the next couple of weeks and get them into the finals, I think they could do some damage in there as well. You wouldn't want to come up against Geelong in your first final. So I think if he hits form, Tom Hawkins potentially gets back in the next couple of weeks. I think Geelong can still do some damage, but at the moment, the way they're playing, I don't think they're going to do much at all. I don't even know if they're going to make the finals. So we'll see how Geelong pans out. At the moment, I think they are I think they'll make it, but only just. And with Collingwood, well, they got a big win here. 16 goals without the likes of Dacos getting the ball in the midfield, getting the ball forward, and Darcy Moore got injured quite early. He's going to be out for the rest of the home and away season. So good win for Collingwood. If they can just win one more game, they will take top spot, which, I mean, to be honest, it's top spot. They do deserve it. So I think that they'll get there anyway. They got Brisbane next week, so they should win that. But if they don't win that, they'll beat Essendon. So Collingwood fans will be happy with that. They'll be top of the ladder going into the finals. Good win as well. And Brody Mychek back in form. That's good for them. Josh Dacos, he was massive in that game. Without his brother, I think I've said this a few times as well, that Josh Dacos actually had a really, really good season. It's just his brother's probably had a better one, so it's a little bit unlucky for Josh, but, he stood up without his brother and, really helped his team get over the line in this one. So, big win for Collingwood, and they really set themselves up for a big final series and potentially a premiership for the first time in 13 years. So, that'd be massive for Collingwood, biggest club in the AFL, to then pull off a premiership this year. We'll see how they go out with that one. But a team that's probably one of the best teams in form at the moment, probably second most informed team at the moment, it's the Sydney Swans, who had a pretty big match against the Gold Coast. Don't have the best record against the Gold Coast in Sydney, but they were able to pull away against the Gold Coast late. They kicked straight, 18 goals, 6. The Swans, 5 wins in a row now, and look, they're going to be pretty hard to beat if they make the finals. Their young guys are back. The young guys are back. The injuries are starting to diminish a little bit more. Rampy, I think, could be back this week, if not next week. So they've got nearly a full strength lineup in the Sydney Swans. So their midfield as well is starting to stand up, and that 3-prong forward line, I think it's going to take. I don't know if we will. I don't think Sydney can go that far in finals. I think that they will probably fall off. If they do make the finals, the Swans, I think they will probably go out, probably first round, if not second. But at this stage, Sydney do have a pretty hard run home. So they needed this win and they got it. So the votes I gave Chad Warner the 3, Will Hayward the 2, and James Rowbottom the 1 vote. All 3 were massive. Will Hayward, probably one of his best games in his career, really. He kicked 4 goals, was probably Sydney's standout forward, especially with the other 3 up there, McLean, Amati, and Logan McDonald. He stood up as well because they were well held by the 3 defenders, and he played a really good game on Charlie Ballard, so that's why I gave him the 2 votes. Chad Warner, he's getting back into that form that he had at the start of the season and towards the last year as well. So if he can hit form with Sydney, and I will say that Errol Goulden was well held in the first half by Tuke Miller. I don't know why they dropped that tag. That seems stupid. That's when Sydney got back into the game. So I think that was just a misplay there by Stephen King. Stephen King? Yeah, Stephen King. So that's a little bit interesting. And the thing is, the Gold Coast, they're 15th now. They've not gone up. They've gone down this season. So I don't know. I think their list is prime for the next coach to come in, whether that be Damien Hardwick or whoever. But I think it's another failed season for the Suns, and it's really unfortunate because players like Ben King and that could potentially be moving at the end of the year just to get a trade out, just so they can have that chance for a premiership. He would have known people like Tom Lynch and Dion Prestige just to see them leave. So if they don't start to perform in the next couple of weeks, I think there could be maybe a player or 2 looking to leave the Suns at the end of the year, which would be really unfortunate, especially if they don't get Damien Hardwick, which I think it's kind of certain that he's going to get it. But if he doesn't, I think there's a lot of players exiting the Gold Coast Suns at the end of the year. After that, we get to North Melbourne versus Essendon. I'm going to be honest, this game was shit. Essendon have really wasted their fixture this year. They've had 4 games against the bottom 2 teams, and they have not got a percentage over 100 points, 100%. That is really poor by Essendon. I think their biggest win against these sides is 50 points against West Coast, which I know 50 points sounds like a good win, but against the West Coast Eagles, I'm sure you guys know, that's probably just that's getting over the line at this point. So they were lucky, Essendon, as well, that they won this game. They were very close to losing it, and I'm going to be honest, if it wasn't for Nick Martin getting back onto the wing, they wouldn't have won this game. He kicked 3 goals, 30 plus touches. He was massive, Nick Martin. The thing is now, I don't know if he's going to hit the All-Australian wingman because they took him off that spot and he's been unsighted almost for the last 6 weeks. So for Essendon, hopefully he stays there for the next couple of weeks because they can still make the finals. I don't think they will because Collingwood and GWS in the next 2 games. Sorry, GWS and Collingwood. 2 really hard games. I don't think they can do it, but yeah, it's a little bit unfortunate for Essendon because they've been sitting in the 8th for the majority of the year, and in the past few weeks they've just dropped out with terrible form. So, yeah, I mean, Essendon, they still keep their finals hopes alive, but I mean, they're hanging by a thread. And in the end, even though I don't think many people would have expected Essendon to make the finals this year, it's almost like a failed season because they have done so well at the start, to then miss at the final hurdle would be pretty disappointing. But with the votes, we get to Nick Martin with the 3, Nick Larkey with the 2, and then Darcy Parish with the 1. We'll move on. Brisbane versus Adelaide Crows. Adelaide desperately had to win this game, and they got very close. Brisbane led them back into it in the last quarter. I was watching this game and streaming it, and the Crows, I think another 5 minutes, they would have definitely given them a run for their money, because Brisbane kind of stopped, and they've done that a few times this year. We saw them against Melbourne a couple of weeks ago do it, and they nearly did it again. But nonetheless, it probably was Charlie Cameron who got him over the line in the end. It was really unfortunate because I was saying when I was calling it, Michael Lanning actually had a really good game, and he still got, I think, 4 goals kicked on him. So that's really unfortunate. And, you know, Charlie Cameron's a match winner. If he just gets those opportunities, it's just, you just have to pray if you're a defender, because he was brilliant in that game. But the Crows did well, and even though they've lost all their games, I think, away from home this year, or maybe, I think they won maybe one. Oh yeah, I think they won it down in Tasmania. I think that's one of their only wins this year away from home. They've done well in the past few games away from home. I think they were pretty close against Collingwood, Melbourne, and now Brisbane, but those 3 losses potentially have, I think they've missed the finals now. It's going to be hard for them. However, there are a lot of teams in the, they've got the Swans this week. This is a massive game. If they can win that one, they're right back in the hunt. If they lose, they miss finals. So they need to win this one against the Swans. We'll talk about that a little bit later as well. But they were very good, and they are exceptionally good at home. So you give them a chance, but Brisbane at home were just going to be too hard to beat. Brisbane were very good. So the 3-2-1 votes. 3 votes went to Hugh McCluggage in his 150th. He was massive. Charlie Cameron got the 2, and then Rory Laird got the 1. All right. Oh, it's cold. Yuck. Anyway, all right. Next, we get to the match of the round, Carlton versus Melbourne. Carlton came out on top just by 4 points. We've already talked about the score review, so I'm not going to talk about that now. But well done for Carlton to win their 8th in a row. And they've I think it's like 1% chance they miss the finals from here if they lose 2 games and they lose, and all the other teams around them win. So I'm going to say it. I think Carlton have made the finals, which I actually said at the start of the year. I predicted them to make the 8. But surely they're there. You got to say it. Surely Carlton are there now. And they've been able to grind out some wins as well against top clubs. They've been able to beat the top 3. They've been able to beat Port, Melbourne, and Collingwood in 3 games of their 8-game winning streak. So I know some people could say at the start of the run they just got some easy beats, which is fair, and I think that's 100% a good call. But they have actually got some wins against some really good teams. And I don't know if they can win the flag from outside the 4. But I think if anyone can, I think it could be this season. Because I think a lot of the teams in the top 4 have kind of faltered at stages. And the teams that are hot at the moment are the teams outside the top 4, really. I mean, if you think about it, Sydney, Carlton, the Crows to an extent when they're at home, they're a really hard team to beat. The Giants, except for the last couple of weeks. All right, maybe not all of them. But, there's a couple of teams. If the teams like St Kilda and the Bulldogs and potentially Essendon make the finals, I don't think it matters. I think it'll be a top 4 team. But if teams like the Crows, the Swans, the Blues, and Geelong, if those are the bottom 4 of the top 8, they're going to be hard teams to beat in the run towards the finals. They're going to be very hard teams to beat. So we'll have to see how that goes. Carlton were very good in this game, though. Lockdown probably won the midfield battle, even though Petrarca and Oliver had quite a few touches, and Viney was pretty good as well. Curnow kicked a couple of goals, which may not sound like much, but in a game that was so low scoring, only 17 goals were kicked between them. That's a pretty good return for him. Harry Mackay not there. He's playing really well. And the Smalls of Carlton are playing good as well. But I think we have to give a special mention to Patrick Cripps. Hasn't probably had the biggest year. Obviously, last year he won the Brownlow, so he hasn't had as big a year as that. But he's definitely bounced back in these 8 weeks, and he played brilliantly in this one. I think he was arguably the player that got them over the line, and that's why I gave him the 3 votes. I gave the 2 votes to Clayton Oliver and the 1 vote to Nick Newman. Nick Newman has hit like stellar form. He's probably in the best form of his career now. He started at the Swans, probably just didn't get that spot there. Also, I think the salary cap with Buddy Franklin, they had to clear out some space, so he was one that went to Carlton. And he's kind of been that small defender, but now he's kind of that running halfback, which I think he's more suited for. So I think Carlton are definitely using him in the right spot. Credit to Michael Voss. He's going to be playing for Carlton's first final series, I think in 10 years. It would have been a while, so it's good to see Carlton in the top 8. I know a lot of people wouldn't say that, but I think when the teams like the Carltons and the Collingwoods are in the top 8, fighting it out, I think it's always like, the big clubs of the AFL making it. It's always good to see. After that, we get to the Derby. I'm going to be honest, this is... Who cares? West Coast, you suck. That is embarrassing to lose against any team by 100 points, especially your crosstown rivals. And then, for God's sakes, this is your 5th or 6th 100-point loss in a season. That is fucking embarrassing. I'm not going to talk too much about this because there's not much to review. Fremantle kicked 17 goals in a row after West Coast kicked the first 2. I looked at the scores and saw West Coast kick the first 2, and I'm like, oh, this could actually be a chance here. And then Fremantle just bagged on 20 in the end. Like, whatever. Anyway, 3 votes went to Lachie Schultz, won the Glendenning medal. He actually was really good at Lachie Schultz, and I think he's had a really good year. I think that Fremantle can definitely build around him. He's definitely probably one of the best hybrid forwards in the game now. Probably just behind... maybe a big thing to say. He's probably just behind Toby Green as one of the best hybrid forwards in the game. I don't see him as like a small forward. I see him a lot more like Toby Green as like a small tall, if you could say that. Because he's a really good mark overhead. He gets up the ground. Yeah, I think he's one of the best forwards in the game. He's very clean with the footy as well. So I think that they've definitely got a player to build around there. Luke Jackson got the 2 votes. He was brilliant in the ruck. He was very close to, I think, winning the Glendenning medal as well. And... Jordan Clark got the 1 vote for Fremantle. Next game, Hawthorn versus Bulldogs down in Tassie, and me and my brother both tipped this. We tipped that Hawthorn would beat the Bulldogs. We said, I think we said it last week, they're a huge response team, the Bulldogs. They won't go down to Tasmania and win this game, and we were 100% right. Hawthorn stood up, and one of their fortresses, really, in Tassie. I think they should just move down there, but I know I'm gonna get so many comments if people hear that. But no, they were brilliant, Hawthorn, and they got a couple more weeks to go. They got Melbourne this week, and I can't remember who they play in the last round, but they've got a couple of they could definitely bag another win. I wouldn't be too surprised if they did. They've rebuilt very well, Hawthorn, and they're definitely set for a couple of good years. I think someone like I think it was 7 AFL posted, do you think Hawthorn will make the finals next year? I think next year's a little bit out of the question. I think they still need another year of development. But the thing is, because they're all so young, they're all going to build together in the next couple of years, which is just massive for the Hawthorn development, and they've just done it well. The Bulldogs, they scrape back. They've got West Coast this week, which, I mean, they need a little bit of percentage. They might as well get it. But then they've got Geelong in the final round down in Cardinia Park. That's going to be tough for the Bulldogs. If they don't make this final series, Luke Beveridge's job should be a question. I know that's a Kane Corns thing to kind of say, but how can't you question his coaching? They've got the list of the century. I think one of the best lists in the AFL, which is big to say. I mean, they've got you got Brisbane, you got Melbourne, you got Collingwood in there. You got probably one of the best young lists in Port Adelaide, and this team's got one of the best lists, young and experienced players. And they're just wasting it. They're playing terrible football. They're playing too selfless football. And if it wasn't for Bontempelli, they would be a long way further down the fucking ladder. They're playing terrible at the moment, the Bulldogs. And they're only winning games when they need to respond. So, they'll beat West Coast this week. People will say, oh, they're back or whatever. They're in the 8. But they could definitely fall out of the 8 by the end of the season. So they're going to be really careful, the Bulldogs. And, I think questions need to be asked of the Bulldogs at the end of the season if they don't make it. But anyway, to the votes. 3-2-1, Jai Newcomb got the 3, Carl Amon with the 2, and then Marcus Bontempelli with the 1. By the way, Jai Newcomb, he's one of the best clearance players in the AFL, which is insane to say, because a couple of years ago he was playing for Box Hill, and now he's one of the best clearance players in the AFL. So, good on him, and he was massive in that game. I think he had a career high 40-plus touches. He was just great. So, good on him. And next we move to St Kilda versus Richmond at the Marvel Stadium. The Marvel Stadium curse for Richmond shines again. They can't win at Marvel Stadium. Ever since I think Damien Hardwick said it a couple of years ago, we don't like playing here. They just can't win there. So, I mean, I guess he was telling the truth. But, yeah, St Kilda keep their season alive, which is kind of interesting because we keep on just expecting St Kilda to fall out of the 8. And I still think they will because they've got Brisbane, they got Geelong and Brisbane in the next 2 weeks. So I think they will fall out of the 8 just because their percentage is pretty low and that draw that the teams like the Swans, Geelong and Carlton have, I think will just be too much. But, I mean, they're holding themselves in there. They're just in there at the moment. Max King fired in that game. He kicked 6 goals for them. I still think, though, that St Kilda's big issue is the fact that they got 6 goals out of Max King, but the rest of the 21 or 22, depending on the sub, only got 8 more goals. So if he doesn't fire, they literally, if you take 6 goals away from Max King in that game, they draw the game. So, look, Richmond, I don't know if they go with Andrew McWalter after this too, because he's kind of fallen off in the past few weeks. I think they need someone outside the club to coach them. I don't know. I don't think interim coaches work. I know my brother said that a lot to me. So I don't know if that's exactly the choice that they should go with. It'll be interesting. I think Chris Newman's been talked about as well as a potential coach for Richmond. I don't know about ex players playing for coaching their team, but on the other hand, it's been quite a while since Chris Newman played, so I don't think it's that big a deal. But it is very hard to pick a club champion. We obviously saw the prime examples play like Brisbane over those few years when they had Michael Vossen and Justin Lepich. It was very hard to let them go because they were such pillars of the club, but they eventually had to. And obviously Nathan Papley as well. So it'll be interesting where Richmond go with that. This game, though, St Kilda played really well. They kind of bursted out of the blocks, really, and kind of held Richmond at bay for the majority of it. They keep their final hopes alive. I think they will fall out, like I said. The votes now, Max King with the 3, Rowan Marshall with the 2, and Jade Gresham with the 1. After that, we get to the final game of the round, and what was set up to be one of the best games of the round turned out to be Port Adelaide blowing them out of the water in the first quarter. So Port Adelaide, I think was their highest score of the year, 136, 21 goals against GWS. Massive win for them, 50-point win. They needed it going into the finals. They lock up their top 4 spot. Potentially can move into the top 2 in the next couple of weeks. I don't know. I don't know if Port are back, though. It's going to be hard because they've still got a lot of injuries. Sam Hayes is actually really good in the ruck as an in because Scott Lysett's still injured. But Charlie Dixon, I don't know if he'll be back very soon. I think they said it was a long-term injury, so that potentially means he won't play the finals either. So Todd Marshall all by himself as a tool. I know Jeremy Finlayson's there, but I don't see Jeremy Finlayson as a pack mark or anything. So if you need to kick it down the line, Todd Marshall's your only option. I don't know if Port can do it. So, I mean, good win for them. They lock up a top 4 spot. If they get a top 2 spot, anything can happen because being at Adelaide Oval is a massive advantage, just like Brisbane being at the Gabba is a massive advantage. But I think it's the young midfielders of Port Adelaide that needs to be shone here. I know it has been a little bit for quite a while now, but Jason Horne-Francis, Zach Butters, and Rosie, all of the 3 voters in this one as well, were massive. They were massive in this game. I mean, for the next 10 years, 15 years, this Port Adelaide midfield is going to... Well, not 15, but... 10 years, I mean, at least. This midfield is going to be carrying the Port Adelaide Footy Club, and they can build a potential premiership off of them. They are going to be massive for the club, and... We'll get to the votes quickly. Horne-Francis got the 3, Butters with the 2, and then Rosie with the 1. Now, the reason why I gave Horne-Francis the 3 over the other 2 is because he kicked the 3 goals. Massive for a midfielder. And, I mean, he's 19 years of age, and he's playing like he's 25. He's going to be massive, Jason Horne-Francis. I know that people were pretty angry about the fact that he left North Melbourne so hastily last year. Who would want to stay at that club? I mean, I'm going to be honest. Who would want to stay there? They're playing dreadful footy. They had a really good start to the season, but they're playing woeful now, and they've lost 20-odd games in a row. So I don't see much of an issue. And I think it's pretty funny as well that a player coming back to SA is huge talking points, and you get booed every week. But going back to Victoria, you don't hear much about that. So, yeah, I think it was a good win for Port. I don't know if they're back. The Giants, I am going to give them a little bit of a mulligan here because they did have injuries to Bedford and Daniels, 2 of their best players this year. And, I don't know if they make the finals, though. I give them a mulligan, but I also think that was the game they had to win, and I did tip them. So, the Giants, I think they may miss it. But even so, if they do miss, I think they've had a wonderful year, the Giants. Adam Kingsley, Toby Green, Stephen Keneally has had a wonderful year. Tom Green, even though he got a bit injured throughout the middle part, and obviously Sam Taylor and Jack Buckley down the back have been brilliant. So they don't have to worry for the years to come, the Giants, but I don't know if they'll make it this year. Yeah, guys, that's the review for round 22. So now we get to the tips for round 23. We start with a massive game, 1 versus 2 at Marvel. Why is it at Marvel? I know that I think every single Victorian club has to play a game at Marvel and at the MCG every year, like as a home game. So I think this is Collingwood's. But why would they, at the start of the year, think, yeah, these two teams made the top, made the prelims at least last year. We're going to make them play at Marvel Stadium. That was a stupid idea. But anyway, at Marvel Stadium, massive game for Collingwood. They win this one, they secure a top spot. If Brisbane win it, though, they almost secure top 2. So massive game for both clubs. The only reason why I'm going to be tipping Collingwood is basically because it's not at the Gabba. I do give Brisbane a bit more of a chance, though, because it's not at the MCG. But at Marvel, I do think Collingwood will be better. However, without Darcy Moore, that is another big loss for them with Brisbane's tall forward line, but also Jack Gunston's out for, well, I think he'll be out. I'm pretty sure he got a pretty serious injury. So I think he'll be out for the Brisbane Lions. So we'll see how that pans out. I think Collingwood win that one, probably a couple of goals. After that, we get to Saturday afternoon, Richmond versus North Melbourne. Play this one at Marvel and play the Collingwood game at the MCG. Whatever. Anyway, so Richmond by North Melbourne at the MCG. Richmond win this one pretty comfortably, I believe. North Melbourne are just in a hole. They're going to go the rest of the season without winning a game, I think. It's pretty disappointing because, I thought at the start of the year they've turned a leaf and they really haven't. So Richmond will win this one pretty convincingly, I think. I think they'll bounce back after a couple of poor performances. And, we'll see how they go for the rest of the year. They do have Port Adelaide in the final round, so a pretty tough game there, but they'll get a pretty easy beat against North. After that, we get to the Gold Coast. First, Carlton in the Gold Coast. Interesting game, I think, because I think the Gold Coast could actually have them in defence because even though Charlie Ballard and they're tall defenders back there, they are quite tall, but they also can play quite small. And with Charlie Curnow down there, and obviously it's a Koning rotating through there, I think that they can actually win that battle, to be fair. I just think that Carlton are playing too good at the moment to lose this game. Even though I think the Gold Coast do actually match up pretty well against Carlton, I do think that Carlton's just in too good a form at the moment, and they win this one, win 9 in a row. And with another round to go after that, they could potentially be going into the finals with 10 wins straight, which is massive for them. After that, we get to the Giants versus the Bombers. If this was 6 weeks ago, this would be one of the games of the round. But now, both teams are pretty poor. I mean, yes, Essendon won last week against North Melbourne, but not exactly a huge win for them, and they just beat the West Coast Eagles the week before that. So, 2 wins from Essendon. I mean, they're in good form, but with a combined win of 8 points in the past 2 weeks against the bottom 2 sides who have averaged like 50-point losses every week, they're not exactly in good form, but the Giants are off 2 losses. So I think the Giants will want to bounce back. They will bounce back in this one. And whoever loses this game is basically written off. You can't make finals from here because both of them don't have a very good percentage, and both of them currently sit outside the 8. So, loser of this is out. Winner of this, a slight chance of making the finals. After that, we get to Saturday night. St Kilda versus Geelong. Another massive, massive game. A lot of these games are on Saturday afternoon, Saturday night sort of window, which is really good to see. I wish it was actually the final round, but anyway. St Kilda versus Geelong at Marvel. I give St Kilda a little bit of a chance here. I think, like I said, St Kilda match up okay with Geelong on the fact that, I don't think Tom Hawkins will be there. So, the Wilkie, I think, matches up pretty well on Jeremy Cameron. I just think the smalls of Geelong will get on top, and I think their midfield will be a little bit too strong. And I just don't think St Kilda can kick a store. I just don't think they will. So I'm going to be picking Geelong in this one. I think they'll win that one pretty comfortably, and will give themselves a real chance towards that finals push. But if they lose, I think whoever loses this game misses the finals. Because I think if St Kilda lose it, I don't think they'll beat Brisbane at the Gabba next week. And if Geelong lose it, they're just straight out anyway. So, yeah, I think this game's actually another one that's going to be whoever loses this game is straight out of the finals. So, we'll see how that one pans out. The other Saturday night game is Adelaide versus Sydney Swans. And I looked to get tickets to this one, and they were basically all sold out. I think you get single tickets, but I'm not going to go by myself. I'm not a loser. Well, I am. I'm doing a podcast by myself. But anyway, Crows versus Swans. If this is at the SCG, I'd be picking my boys. But at the Adelaide Oval, it's going to be hard. The Swans did win over there in Gather Round and played well, but they played against Richmond. This is a whole different beast. Beating the Crows at Adelaide Oval would be a massive win for the Swans and would truly prove that they're in some good form at the moment. Not that I don't think the Swans are in good form, but this would just prove it tenfold. But I think the Crows are in some good form at the moment. They're not losing games by very much away from home, and at home they're still a dominant force. They will have Isaac Rankin back this week as well, which is also massive for them. I think Harry Cunningham will take that job anyway, but it's going to be massive for the Crows. They need to win this game to keep their finals hopes alive. If Sydney lose this one, it doesn't necessarily mean they will miss the finals, but they need to win one of the next two games. So at this point, I'm picking the Crows because it's at Adelaide Oval, but I think the Swans can give them a real fight for their money. We'll see how that one pans out. Sunday afternoon, early game, Western Bulldogs versus West Coast. The Bulldogs win that one by at least 50 points. After that, we get to Melbourne versus Hawthorn. I'm sorry, I'm not going to spend time on that. I mean, Bulldogs would just respond, beat them by 60-odd points, and the game is over. I don't need to explain why I'm picking the Bulldogs. After that, we get to Melbourne versus Hawthorn. I do give Hawthorn a little bit of a chance here. I know on the ESPN tipping app, they're only a 7% tip for Hawthorn, but I don't actually rate Melbourne's form at the moment. I don't think they're in that much of good form, really. I do think the loss of Petty was pretty big a couple of weeks ago, and Brodie Grundy's not the forward option, so I don't know if he goes back to the VFL or whatever. I do think Melbourne, I think you have to pick Melbourne here. I do think the Hawthorn are in some good form, and I do think that they can match up with them pretty well. The problem is, I don't know if Hawthorn's midfield can get on top here, and if Hawthorn's midfield loses, then Melbourne win this one all day. But if Hawthorn can get on top in the midfield, I give them a chance, because I think that's where the game can be won for Hawthorn, because if Melbourne are off just a little bit, I think Hawthorn could have their day at the MCG. Young guys could, I think they could have a chance here, but I just think that Melbourne, they're up in the top four for a reason. I think they win this one. I think it will be a close game, though. And finally, we get to Fremantle versus Port Adelaide at Optus Stadium. Port Adelaide don't have the best record at Optus Stadium. I think they lost against Fremantle last year down there. I think they beat West Coast last year, but again, who cares? It's West Coast. Port Adelaide finally got themselves back with a win against the Giants, so you can't really count them out. They're kind of back in form now. We'll see if they get a few injured players back this week. They got a couple back last week, which I think really helped them against the Giants. I just think Port Adelaide win this one because they're just higher up on the ladder. They're back into a bit of form, and I just think that Port Adelaide's midfield is just humming along very nicely. I think they'll get on top of Fremantle, and I think if they don't win that midfield battle, I think they're going to get rolled over pretty convincingly. If they can win the midfield battle, though, Fremantle, with Sarong and Brayshaw and the like, I think they have a chance. But I just think Port runs too deep through there, and I think it could be a close first half. But I think Port Adelaide's, big bulky midfielders will just take over in the second, and Port Adelaide will run away with that one at the end of the day. But now, guys, at the end of the tips, we get to the AFL Fantasy. I had a shocking week. My God, I got 2016. I had a shocker. Luckily for my league, I didn't actually have a game because I won the week before. But I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players score over 100. That's it. And I was lucky that I picked the captain that was one of them, which was Marcus Bontempelli. But I was really disappointed by Tom Stewart and Dyson Heppel, who I brought in. Both only got 70. The midfield, Merritt only got 90. Sarong only got 86. Dunkley only got 61. Crouch only got 68. Neal only got 80. Ugh. Cornelio only got 63. And the worst of all, McRae, who's had a pretty good year for quite a while now, only got 45. That was atrocious. I might as well have played my reserves. I mean, Nankervis, who I have in there, got 63. Hewitt got 67, which is pretty good. Even Faye scored 64. So I was pretty disappointed by that. 2 more rounds to go. I do have a prelim. I think it's actually against my brother this week, which it is actually. So we'll see how that one goes. Let's hopefully next week I can say I have some good news for you about that. But we get to the trades, which at the moment will be... I've got rid of Elijah Hewitt. He's been massive as a West Coast midfielder. I think he's definitely got some years to come. Some good form for him. I think he'll be a good player. I got rookie for Fremantle named Warner. He's 216 at the moment. I was going to go a little bit higher for McDonald, but the reason why I didn't is because I've got rid of Jack McRae, and I've been able to put Dunkley into my forward line, and I'm getting Clayton Oliver. I was going to get Tom Green, but I don't think Clayton Oliver scored under 100 any of the games this year. And I think he's got a very good ceiling. I think that he's just primed for this. Clayton Oliver to finish off this season, and hopefully he can get me over the line in the next couple of games and maybe win my first ever league premiership for AFL Fantasy. But yeah, guys, that is the Boundary Riders podcast for this week. Next week we will be doing one as well. However, next weekend I won't be doing any live streams, and I'll probably the podcast will probably be out late potentially on the week after because I have my wedding to go to. So yeah, thanks for watching today, guys. I know I've said this a few times, but after the wedding and that, I'll be having a little bit of extra money. So hopefully I'll be able to try and find a way to get this on a Spotify or a listening platform, audio platform. So, it's a podcast. You guys would want to listen to it. And I'm really happy that you guys are supporting the channel. I've seen a lot of videos lately. They've been going up views and stuff, and we got up to nearly 120 subs. So that's pretty good for an AFL channel, considering it's basically only localized to Australia. I'm really impressed by that. So I really appreciate it. And my brother does too. But yeah, thanks for watching today, guys. Will be a stream out on probably sometime this weekend. Thanks for watching. Hopefully your team wins this week. We'll catch us all next time.